Hello to everyone, and thank you for attending to my session. Yeah, I know that at the same time is GynaCube, so I really appreciate that you are here with me, listening me. So I'm going to talk about how to find your Power BI, your PI reports or personal identifiable information. That's maybe the first part of the topic. So when we are there, I'm happy to answer any question. After that, I'll talk a few more things that I'll explain later. Well, my name is Francisco. As you might tell from my accent, I'm from Spain. I was living here in the UK, in Manchester, until not long ago. I was living in Manchester for about 8 years until just December. I moved back to Malaga, south of Spain. I'm co-administrator of the Power BI user group in Malaga. So if anyone want to talk in Malaga, if you go for holidays or something, please pick me in Teams. Yeah, you can talk there. Yeah. We have a great audience there, so big community in Malaga. But yeah. So also, I have the blog Power BI Style. Unfortunately, for the majority of you, this is in Spanish. But to be fair, it's a bit abandoned probably for the last year. I'm quite busy at the moment. My LinkedIn is there if you want to connect with me, if you want to ask me any questions in the future. And yeah, mainly I work as a Power BI administrator or Fabric administrator now, but also I work with other tools. But yeah, mainly administrator of Power BI or Fabric. By the way, how many of you here is administrator of Fabric now? Okay, half of the audience more or less. And how many of you went to the Rishi's talk yesterday? Okay, none of you. Well, Rishi, I think you were yesterday. Yeah. Well, Rishi explained part of what I'm going to explain today, but I think maybe I'll go deeper in what is the governance and administration in some of the parts of the talk. Okay, here is the QR for the feedback. I'm going to share this again at the end of the session, so, well, yeah, it is there. The agenda for today. First, I'm going to give a few solutions of how to find PII data. And later, I'm going to talk about information protection and data loss protection. Inside of that, you have sensitivity labels, policies. Microsoft Defender is not there, but to be fair, it's part of that. And also, at the end of the session, I'll talk about some tenant settings that are very important that you set up and what you have to monitor and audit. Okay, what is my PII data? I will say that there are multiple solutions to find what is your PII data. Some of them might work only for premium, other ones only with a couple of databases, and other solutions, they work for everything, to be fair, for any database. The first one is only for premium. You can set up a policy that is going to detect PII data. But again, this is only for premium, and this is able only to scan your premium workspaces. Something very important here is that if you set up this policy, this is going to be triggered for every single refresh. And it's going to have a cost of 30% of resources for that refresh. For example, if that refresh is, I don't know, is consuming 10 core units, so you will have to add another 3 units. So in total, it will be 13 units. Also, this is probably not going to be very accurate. It's not going to find all your PII data. You're going to find all the PII data that maybe you are telling to find, for example, credit cards, date of birth, emails. Those ones are by default, but you also can customize some fields. But yeah, that's going to have a cost that it's going to increase the resources that you are using. Maybe let's say that you are nearly at the limits of your capacity. Maybe you have to increase your capacity only because of that. And also, maybe it's not very accurate. That's one solution. Second solution only works for Synapse and Azure SQL databases. Well, it works also for Excel if it is online in SharePoint, but yeah, you don't want to work with Excel. So how it works this with Synapse and Azure SQL databases is at the level of your database, you have your data classified, and for example, some of the data is classified as confidential. If you are connected to that data, automatically your model will become confidential. You have to change some settings at the level of the tenant, but I'll explain that later. But the way it works is that, so you are connecting to some confidential data, so automatically your model and report will become confidential as well. So you don't have to do anything. To be fair, that's a really good solution. But if you're connected to another database, for example, I don't know, Oracle, yeah, that's not going to work for you. So the third and the fourth solution, they are nearly the same. There are a few differences, but they are nearly the same. And I will say they are a workaround. So the third solution is forcing all your refreshes through the gateway. Let's imagine that you're connecting, I don't know, let's say a Snowflake. So Snowflake, you can connect cloud to cloud. But the problem that you have if you're connected cloud, if you're allowing cloud to cloud connection, is that the developers are going to use their own credentials. They're going to use their own credentials and you don't have any idea to what they are connecting to. Maybe if you do data lineage, yeah, you know. But with this solution that I'm going to explain now, you're able to tell where exactly you have PII data. So the way to do this is you're blocking the connection between the Power BI service and Snowflake in this case, or any database, and you create different connectors. You create one connector that is only for non-PII data. This connector is going to use a service account that has only access to non-PII data. So anyone that is developing a report that doesn't have PII data should use that connector. So the way to do this is, okay, let's give access to everyone, or to all the developers, let's give access to this connector. Because you don't have any problem if they're using that connector. For example, if they have confidential data and they use that connector, so or it's going to break or the data is going to be masked. It depends on the database. The another connectors is for PII data. Here, you can create as many as you like. It depends how many levels of PII data you have. You might have only maybe confidential and very high confidential. So, and again, you create different service accounts with different access. Maybe the one of confidential has access to confidential data and non-PII data as well. And the one of very high confidential data has access to absolutely everything. Here, you are giving access to the developers to very few of them. Don't give access to all of them, and you'll have to train them as well. You'll have to tell them, look, you have to use this connector when you have only confidential data. You have to use this connector when you have only very high confidential data. Don't use this connector, especially if it is only non-PII data, because then you're not going to be able to answer the question of where we have PII data. Yep. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. The question is what about is this model? So, well, I set up that to simplify. Where it says report is reports and model. It's actually model, to be fair. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you could have thousands of models and reports. For example, in a self-service BI business, you might have, I don't know, 10,000 reports. I've seen that in businesses, that you have more than 10,000 reports. In that case, it's going to be a mess to answer that question, where is my PII data? When they come to you, where is the PII data? If you don't have something like this, it's going to be nearly impossible. to answer that question. Maybe you have a tool for data lineage. Yeah, you might answer from there. But yeah, again, it's not going to be difficult. Sorry, it's not going to be easy. Data lineage is not always working. It depends on the logic that you have as well in your SQL, if you have Power Query logic as well. So data lineage is not always working. So, but this, if you follow the process, this is going to always work. You might be able to tell where you have PII data. Okay. We connect we force to use the gateway. We create different connectors and we give different access. The only one that will have access all the developers is the one with non-PII data. The question is how you can tell the reports that are connecting, for example, to, I don't know, let's say level 2 that is very high confidential through the REST API. From the audience who is using the REST API, who is familiar with the Power BI REST API, okay, it's only 2 people. It wasn't in my plan to explain this, to be fair, but from the REST API, one of the calls that you have to do is get data sources. So when you get data sources, and let me go to the next screen. When you get data sources, you're going to get something like this. So you get data sources from the endpoint of the REST API, and you get something like this. And this data source ID is the clue here. This data source ID, you can map that data source ID. By the way, ignore what you have in the left side right now. That's something else. This, to be fair, is the same, but it's something else. I'll explain. This data source ID, you can map it as well if you make a call for the connectors that are for example, this gateway ID. Let's imagine that you're using the gateway. You know that this gateway ID exists. So under that gateway ID, you might have, I don't know, let's say you have 10 connectors. You might have connectors to other databases or other data sources. So you make a call to that source as well, and then you're able to make a mapping between data sources ID and what they mean. I didn't take a screenshot of that, but yeah, you have to make, I think it's only 2 calls. Get data sources for every single data set. You don't have any limitation on that. You can run more because in some of them you have 200 calls per hour, but in this one you don't have any limitation. If you send maybe thousands in 1 hour, maybe you might be throttled, because I've seen that you are throttled sometimes. But yeah, you have to do a mapping. That bit there, I put it as well because the same solution, you could use it with cloud connectors. Cloud connectors, I think they are available from September. I think now they are generally available. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they are generally available now. But the main difference here is, you see that the connection ID? That connection ID is data source ID when you go to the REST API. But that connection ID, when it's with cloud, it doesn't exist mapping with the gateway because it's not using gateway. It's going to put you even here a gateway ID. You send that gateway, you use that gateway ID to get the call. It doesn't exist, it doesn't return any data. It makes sense, it doesn't return any data because it's not a gateway. So it's something that the Microsoft set up, but it's not a gateway. If you don't want to use the gateway, you'll have to take notes of those connection IDs. You'll have to take notes of those connection IDs, maybe have something in Excel that, imagine you have, I don't know, let's say you have 5 connectors, 1 for non-PII data and another 4 for PII data. So just take notes of those data source IDs and maybe put names to them, whatever you want to call it, because those data source ID is going to show everywhere. And in those cases that they are not showing, you know that the developer is using their own credentials. So you have to put in place as well a monitor system if you go with another solution that I was showing before. Use cloud connections or cloud connectors. Both are very similar. The only problem is that with the cloud connectors, you are not able to force developers to use the gateway. Because if you're able to set up cloud connectors, it means that you can communicate from cloud to cloud. You can communicate directly from the Power BI service with the cloud database. So that's why you have to put a system there to monitor what's going on. So in this case, again, train people, tell them, look, you are able to connect cloud to cloud, but you are not allowed to use your own credential when you are in the service. You have to use always the cloud connection, the connectors that we have set up for you. If you find that there are people that are not following the rules, so you'll have to speak with them in that case. Okay. So I talk now. Is there any question online? Okay, all good. Thank you. Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, now I'm going to talk about information protection and data loss protection. This topic is just a bit different, so it's like we're changing of topic. So one of the most important, yeah?
Sorry, a bit on the previous topic. So
yeah.
Basically you're saying is whatever source we have in our organization, we have to have a connection for it, set up centrally, and
Yeah.
allowing. So how does that work in like an environment with 12,000, not 12,000, but let's say 1,000 report developers and over 6,000 sources? How does that
6,000. The question is how this solution will work in a very big company with more than 1,000 users, let's say hundreds of developers. You're not going to have more than 6,000 data sources. You're going to use a data warehouse. Maybe from your data warehouse, you only need a few connectors. So
we actually have 6,000 sources.
okay, he said that he has 6,000 sources, but what kind of sources do you have?
No, we're talking about both enterprise SQL servers.
Yeah.
We're talking about data warehouses. We're talking about Databricks instances. We're talking about Adobe Analytics.
Okay.
And so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, if you have many sources, basically you have to put all of them in one place. So you have to do a data warehouse. So all your sources will be in one place. Even if you have 6,000 sources, everything should be in one place. Otherwise, yeah, to go with the solution is probably impossible. Also, if you have 6,000 sources, the problem that you have is how you maintain that, how you give access to people. How, imagine one person maybe need access to 100 sources. So maybe it's quite difficult to, and also how do you put the data together that's coming from multiple places? I think it's better to put everything in a data warehouse. In this case, maybe Fabric or any other solution. Yeah, thank you. So let's talk now about information protection and data loss protection. So one of the most important things, if you want to secure your data, is probably sensitivity labels. Also, it's giving tips to the users. So if someone is connecting, I don't know, or see a tip that says confidential, maybe they are more be careful. So they might say, okay, I'm not able to share this, but the most important thing for me about sensitivity labels is that you can block people that are external to the business to open, for example, Excel files or even PBX files. That's why I think they're very important. Let's imagine we have very sensitive information. I download the data and I send it to the competitors. So if it has a label, highly confidential with the right setup, no one will be able to open the file. Even it could be blocked inside of the company as well. So maybe only a bunch of people will be able to see that kind of label. But something very important, at the level of Power BI, who is giving access is the access that you have in Power BI. It's not the label. It could happen that you download some data, and according to the label, when you open the Excel file, you are not able to open the Excel file. So that will work only when you download data. So some tenant settings that are very important to set up is obviously allow users to apply sensitivity labels, otherwise they cannot use them. At the level of the sensitivity labels, it's very rare that you can create them. You'll have to speak with security. This is something that you set up in Microsoft Purview, and it's very rare. Even if you're the Fabric administrator, you don't have access to this. So there's many people that you have to speak with if you don't have labels. If they're already set up, yeah, you only have to change a few settings in your tenants, and you'll be able to use them. So allow users to apply sensitivity labels, apply sensitivity labels from data sources to their data in Power BI. What this means is, this is for Synapse and Azure SQL or Excel. If you are connecting to those data sources, so the label will be the same when you're connecting to them, depending on the data that you're connecting. And also, something that is nice to have is automatically apply sensitivity labels to downstream content. What it means is, if you have a model that, for example, is confidential, anything that you create using that model becomes confidential in your report. If you download data from that report, it's confidential as well. But again, you have to enable that. And for example, these two things that we talked before, they are labels that apply automatically. They don't have an owner. So when the labels don't have an owner, you're not able to change the label. So if you really want someone to change the label, you have to change the setting to allow workspace admins to let them to change the label. It depends if you want to allow this. This is, to be fair, this is up to you. Otherwise, if one day you need to change the label because of any reason, you'll have to speak with the. There are a few people that you can speak, but it's people like the admin of 365, so the global admin. And you're not going to speak with that guy every time that you want to change a label. So I think it's better that you enable that. And something that I will say that is important as well, anyone knows what are links in Power BI, or how to create a link in Power BI that's giving access? Well, there are links. You can create links that are giving access to the whole company, and especially if you have something that's confidential, you don't want that kind of links. So you want to block that. To be fair, I will say that this is probably better to block it for the whole tenant, not only for reports that are with sensitivity labels. And if someone needs to create these kind of links, maybe they should speak with the Fabric administrator. But yeah, you always can set up groups that only very few people can, for example, create links. But yeah, be careful with that, because everyone in the organization will be able to see the data. And this is how it looks in the Power BI service, in the Power BI desktop as well, how the sensitivity labels look. So at the level of the workspace, the level of the workspace, and this is, well, to be fair, this is very rare that probably you do this. This is if you create a report straight away from the service. So when you're going to save it, it's telling you that it has a label already. And this is from the Power BI desktop, and something probably nice to have here is that you can create a link internally for documentation of what it means: public, general, confidential. Maybe people doesn't understand when they have to use confidential label, for example, or highly confidential. So it might be difficult to understand, so you can put a link there. And if we go to the Power BI desktop, for example, if you download a PBX file with a label, if you didn't pass the login to the Power BI desktop, you're going to have a message like this. You're not going to be able to open the report. Again, imagine if this PBX file is sent away, so they wouldn't be able to open it, only if they are passing an email ID from the tenant. Yeah, one question? The question is if the labels are per data set. They are generic. You will have, like, let's say 5 or 6 different labels, probably at the level of the business. But you can put the labels at the level of the model, if that's your question. So for every different model, you could. No, it's for the whole model. So with the labels, to be fair, they might say confidential, but maybe it's classified confidential, maybe only because of one column. So you might have 100 columns, even 1,000 columns, but only because of one column, it may be confidential. This here is how it looks. So it's giving a tip inside of Power BI Desktop. But yeah, I think sensitivity labels are a very nice feature for protecting your data, but they come with limitations. To be fair, there are many limitations, and they may block you in your work, and sometimes it might be tricky to understand why it is blocking you, why you're having problems. And these are all what I consider are the important ones. One is you cannot use parent labels. And before I explain you everything else, I'm going to explain you what is a parent label and sublabel. So let me go to Microsoft Purview. I forgot to mention that the labels are created in Microsoft Purview, but it's very rare that you have access to this environment. So, for example, this one here you have different labels, and at the level of general, you have two sublabels. So when you have sublabels, these become a parent label. Parent labels cannot be used in Power BI. And this one, according to the documentation of Power BI, to be fair, is a bit strange how they document this. This is not a parent label yet. But imagine if I create a sublabel, if I go and create a sublabel, this will become a parent label. So right now, I will be able to use this one, public, personal, all the other sublabels. So let's come back. Yep.
So I saw the scope is file and email. Can it be only?
It could be Power BI as well. It could be only Power BI. Yeah. Yeah. It would be rare that you do that, but yeah, it would be Power BI. To be fair, the scope, I think it should be for the whole company, especially for big organizations. For bigger organization, it's very difficult that you go with the scope for something very limited. Yeah. So you cannot use parent labels. Parent labels won't be inherited, but we are saying that we cannot use parent labels. How is it possible that if you cannot use parent labels, how you can have a parent label in Power BI? So you can have a parent label in Power BI. For example, imagine right now I only have confidential, and inside of confidential I don't have sublabels. So I'm using confidential in a few reports. Tomorrow, the guys of security create sublabels for confidential. So they are creating my label now, a parent label. So that's going to be a risk of security, and probably the guys from security don't know about this because it's something very specific. So that label is not going to be inherited. And I say that it's a risk for security because imagine you have your Power BI report with confidential data. They create sublabel, your label become parent label. Someone download data, and the Excel file now is without protection. Also, export will fail with parent label. That is basically what I'm saying. It's not going to have any protection. And issues exporting when label has been removed from Purview. This is something similar. Imagine I don't know. It's very rare that someone is going to remove confidential, but let's imagine that you have reports that they are classified as general, and they remove your label. The question is if you can change the name. To be fair, I don't know. I believe that you can. They are probably working with this, but yeah, I will have to check on that. Yeah. So if someone removes the label, this is another risk of security. You are going to be able to export the data, but even if you try to export to Excel, it's going to export as ODC file. ODC files are not protected. Again, risk of security. I think these two risks of security are very important that you speak with security, that this never happened. Or if they need to do anything of this, they could speak with you, and then you could have a plan of how to remediate this. Okay, let's speak now about policies. We already spoke on one of the policies that is about scanning for PII data. I'm not going to explain that one again. I explained that at the beginning. I think that that's important. Maybe if you have premium, maybe let's do a first scan, but remember that this is going to cost you 30% of resources of the refreshes. But another two policies that I think they might be important, but you should choose only one of them, is force a label by default. For example, you could tell, okay, I want everything to be classified by default as confidential. I wouldn't go that way. I would go maybe force to choose a label. So you are forcing to the developers to choose a label. So they may need to understand if something is confidential, something is general, or very confidential. By the way, the first one, that is by default, I understand that this is a label that is applied automatically. So imagine your developer is publishing, and later they realize, oh, this is not confidential. We have to change this. This is general. If you don't change the setting that we talked before, they're not going to be able to change that. So, yeah, maybe apply those settings that the admin can change labels. Yeah, one question?
So the PII data scanning, where is it enabled, like the DLP policies?
Yeah, let me show you that. Sorry, I need to stop. Yeah, the question is, where can we set up the policy for the scan of PII data? So, and I'm going to show that in the screen. So you can create policies here. So you will go here, create policies, and one of the policies for scanning. You can scan the whole tenant, or you can scan a specific workspaces. But bear in mind, if you are scanning the whole tenant, it's going to be only premium. For example, personal workspaces, they could be in premium, but again, in a big enterprise, you were telling me before, more than 1,000 people. If you want to put everything, all the personal workspaces in premium, if you want, you can do it. But I wouldn't do it, to be fair. Also, the scan is going to be for all those workspaces. Okay. Yeah, another question?
Just set up this policy in Purview.
Yeah.
Not within Power BI, the tenant.
Yeah, the question is if you only can set up this policy in Purview, or if you could set up this in the Power BI, or Power BI server, Power BI tenant. No, you only can set up this in Purview. Again, you have to speak with the teams of security. It's very rare that any developer or any Fabric administrator will have access to this. I've never had access to this. This is only a tenant that is in trial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, another question.
Yeah.
What is considered PII? Can I customize it?
Yeah. The question is, what is considered PII data? There are columns by default, and you can customize as well. Yeah, but it's going to be tricky if you go that way. Also, the ones by default, to be fair, the list is not very large. Yeah. Okay, let me go back to the presentation. Okay, we talked about these three policies. All of this has to be set up in Microsoft Purview, and now we're going to talk about Microsoft Defender. Microsoft Defender is another tool, but I think it is great as well for protecting your data. For example, you might want to block downloads from unmanaged devices. For example, here I have my personal phone, and I might want to connect from here to the Power BI service using the web browser or using the application that we have. In that case, I'm able to see the data, but if I download anything, I will be blocked by Microsoft Defender. I think that's great. So that even if you have sensitivity labels, probably you don't want that anything is downloaded to a mobile phone that the company doesn't own, or to any laptop that the company doesn't own. Also, you can block downloads of PII files with sensitivity reports. Let me explain you why you might want to do this. You might have something classified as confidential data. Maybe at the level of the report, and even at the level of the model, you are not able to see any data that might be confidential or very confidential. You go inside of the report, and in the Power Query is the confidential data. So it could be all included in the refresh. It's not loading to the model. But if you go inside of the Power Query, you can see the confidential data. So that's tricky, and I've seen that sometimes, that people have very high confidential data inside of the Power Query that is only there. It's not visible in the model or the report. And some alerts that you can set up. Again, all of these security team. You have to speak with a security team. And it's important that you explain to them, because they don't know about Power BI. They don't know about Power BI, but you don't know either about security. So you have to help each other. So some of the alerts that you can set up: massive sensitivity label removal. So someone removing sensitivity labels. So maybe this guy is removing sensitivity labels because it's going to send the data away somewhere. This is probably similar, downgrade of label. So from very high confidential to maybe public. Again, because maybe this guy wants to send the data away. This is something that you can monitor as well from the activity log. You are able to tell from the activity log if someone is changing labels from Hive to public. Again, this is at the level of the model. Well, model and reports, it could be. Yeah. If someone is sharing with external users, you want to know as well. And if someone is sharing loads of reports with someone, even if it is with someone internal in the business. Some of the settings this is more settings that you have to probably have a look. Block, copy and paste visuals. This is up to you, because they always could do a screenshot. I'm not sure if with Microsoft Defender you can block screenshots. You probably can do that, but I'm not sure on that. I'm saying don't let to copy and paste visuals, because if you copy and paste visuals, they're not going to have any label. The same with CSV, HTML, and XML. Especially the most important here is the CSV, because at the end you download CSV and that's going to Excel, but it's CSV. CSV doesn't support sensitivity levels, so you have to block it. So you want everyone to export, if they have to export, to export to Excel. Obviously, publish to web, that's something that you should have blocked always for obvious reasons. This one about the links, we talked about this one before, but the links, you can block it for the whole tenant or only for the ones with sensitivity labels. And also another one that I like to block is the Power BI trial. And you might wonder why. So it's 60 days, and I like blocking that because you can publish to personal workspaces without any license. Let's say that's okay. I don't like people using a personal workspace, but let's say that's okay. But that person is going to share with someone. So if that person is sharing to someone, if that guy doesn't have a Power BI Pro license, it's going to trigger the trial. And you want to know that as soon as possible. The Power BI trial. So if you don't block the Power BI trial, when you are connecting, imagine you don't have a Power BI Pro license. If the Power BI Pro license is needed, Microsoft is going to trigger the trial. Well, the problem comes with personal workspaces. Someone is publishing to personal workspaces, they want to share with a colleague, and the colleague doesn't have a Pro license, so to consume from another from a personal workspace that I'm assuming that they are in pro because they could be in premium, they need a pro license. Yeah. It's nearly impossible. Like the question is if it is possible to stop personal workspace. There is a workaround, but I believe for big enterprise doesn't work. You could assign all your personal workspaces to an embedded capacity, and once that you assign everything to the embedded capacity, turn off the capacity. Well, yeah, to be fair, that was a question I made last year in SQL Bits, and that was the answer from the cat thing. There is no answer for that. But that I'm telling that that's not going to work for big enterprises because there is people joining every day. Yeah, the small businesses, yeah, you can do it, but to be fair, in a small businesses, it's better to say, look, don't use personal workspaces. Alternative solution is to put everything in premium, but I don't like that idea either. About guest users of external users, here probably you need to block everything if you want to protect your data. I mean everything, but let some people, maybe some people need to, for example, to share with external users. So maybe a very reduced people might be able to share with external users. But one that is very important to block is invite external users to your organization. If you are in a big corporation, this is going to be blocked at the level of the global tenant. So even whatever you do there, big corporation, is not going to work. Because what that's doing is, for example, you go to an app, you write the email of someone that is not in your tenant, even personal emails, and that is added automatically to your Azure Active Directory as a guest user. And that person could have access now to everything they give access. That's going to be, again, in big corporation, this is blocked at the level of the global tenant. Yeah, one question?
Yeah, well, the thing with guest users is that, sometimes companies buy each other.
Yeah.
And then they have like two tenants.
Yeah.
And then they say, yeah, well, we're two companies, but we're not like one. But they still keep two tenants. So
Yeah.
you end up having like a lot of external users that not really
Yeah.
external. And then there's when things get messy.
Yeah.
So if I block any
Yeah.
of those things, then the company will stop working.
Yeah, the question is, well, it's not actually a question, but yeah, it's a comment. Bernard Agullo was commenting that in some cases you might have two different tenants because there was a merge and it's the same company. And yeah, that's fair enough, to be fair. That's something that you'll have in the company. But I don't see that as a problem. The problem is that, yeah, you'll have to allow those kind of settings, and allowing those kind of settings, you allow to add external user from another company. Let's call it that way. Okay, so let's go to, I think this is the last one that is about monitoring and auditing. First thing that you want to monitor is access to workspaces, apps, reports, and datasets. This is the minimum that you want to know. But here there is something very important that I think the majority of people don't know. Reshare access. Do anyone knows about what's happening with reshare access, or how is very wide in any business? Okay, so let me show you that. Instead of telling you, I'll show you. So I'm going to go to a random report. I'm going to go to Power BI, and this button here, this, to be fair, is the hell of Power BI. For security, this is the worst that Power BI can have, and I think it's impossible to block it. You click here, share, and let's say, I don't know, I'll write that. No. So I want to give access to this person. This is creating a link for this person, but read what it shows there. No one is going to read it. You're going to write people are going to write the name and click in send. Specific people can view and share. So you are giving access to this person to view and share, so to reshare. And just to show you that that's true, well, it's saying that, but if you really want to change that, you only can do this manually. You have to click here, click and disable this. To be fair, this should be disabled by default, but I don't see any way that you can disable this by default. So now if I click in apply, so the share disappears. And in many tenants that I've seen, reshare access have it many people. And I think you can see that only if you get the access at the level of the dataset. So at the level of the dataset, you have to search for reshare. To be fair, it's very confusing because there are 6 or 7 categories that you don't know what it means, but you have to find the one that contains the word reshare to know if you have any issues. Yep.
That will only work if the person has got a pro license, right? You can't share to anybody who doesn't have.
Well, if you are in premium, yeah, you can. Well, the question is if this will happen only with people that has a pro license or premium. Well, you can. What I just shown, this can happen with anyone. It doesn't matter if they have pro or premium. But who is triggering this? The first person that is triggering this are the developers that has access to the workspace. So again, it's training that you have to give to the developers that they shouldn't do this. The share. With the desktop, it's not possible. It's not possible. Okay, let me come back to the presentation. Okay, another one, usage, to know if your reports are being used, but we are talking here about security and governance. So you want to know the usage because you might have apps that are used or no used. Many people has access to your apps or to your reports, but maybe they're not being used by those users. So this is a way that you can tell to remove the access. Downloads of data or PBX files, this is important as well, because if people are downloading data, you may want to know if your data is confidential. First, you can tell if your data is confidential according to the setup that you set up in the gateway, what I explained before. Okay, now I know who is downloading confidential data. Is that data is protected, my confidential data? Does it have a label? And also, you want to know if someone is downloading data, because if someone is continuously downloading data from a report, it's because they are probably building their own solution in Excel. If that's the case, maybe you have to speak with that person and say, look, what's the problem? What you are doing with the data, and maybe we can help you. The report maybe need further development to avoid that this guy is building their own solution in Excel. PBX files, again, because of what I explained before. You want to know who is downloading PBX file and if they have confidential data and if it is protected. Changes in the tenant settings. If you are the only one who is the Power BI administrator, Power BI administrator, fair enough. Maybe you don't have to keep an eye on that. Always the global administrator could make changes as well. They could take over and make changes, but I don't think that guy is going to do that. But if there are multiple people who can make changes, you have to keep an eye on this because someone might change for example, the setting of publish to web. And you want to tell that straight away. You can tell that from the REST API, for example, and from the activity logs. Well, you have more things that you you should monitor there. Unfortunately, I don't have time. I just ran out of time. But yeah, thank you very much to everyone. And if any of you have a question, happy to answer them later. Yeah, thank you.